A second chance at love. I never thought I'd be telling this story to anyone. It's the kind of thing you keep close to your heart, like a treasured memento you take out only in private moments. But here I am, 50 years old, sitting at my desk overlooking the Denver skyline as the afternoon light steals long shadows across my apartment, finally ready to confess how my life changed when I least expected it. They say life begins at 40, but for me, it truly began at 50. After my divorce from Ickard, I had convinced myself that the passionate chapter of my life was over, filed away with other youthful indulgences like staying out until dawn or believing I could change the world with my jewelry. Nihilism. I had made peace with my quiet existence. My days had a comfortable rhythm. Mornings spent to my laptop writing lifestyle pieces for various publications, afternoons volunteering at the Communities ID Center helping young women find their voice through writing, evenings alone with a glass of wine, and whatever book had captured my attention that week. It wasn't a bad life. In fact, after the buoyant final years of my marriage, the calm was welcome. Richard and I had once been so in sync, both ambitious, creative souls with dreams bigger than our Denver apartment could hold. I fell for his charismatic smile and the way his mind never stopped working, always crafting the next brilliant camp. We built a life together, had two beautiful children, and for a while, it felt like we were living the dream. But success changed him, or perhaps it just amplified what was already there. The nights at the office became business trips, and the emotional distance grew until it felt like we were living parallel lives under the same roof. I tried everything: date nights, counseling, even OCs, Ekan honeymoon to Napa Valley, where we'd first fallen in love. But you can't resuscitate something that's already gone. The divorce was like a hurricane, violent and destructive, leaving me emotional, drained but strangely relieved. At least the pretending was over. The kids were in college by the numero Emma at UCLA, studying film production, and Jason at Colorado State, pursuing environmental science. They took it hard at first, but ultimately understood. They were old enough to have seen how hollow our relationship had become. For 5 years after, I dated occasionally. Cautious, carefully aided coffees with men my age who were similarly divorced, similarly cautious. Most were fine company, but there was never that spark, that inexplicable chemistry that makes your skin tingle and your race. I told myself I was past that stage of life, that companionship should be enough. Connect. Ion, yes. Friendship, absolutely. But passion? I had resigned myself to finding that in books rather than real life. Until that Saturday morning at Tattered Cover Bookstore in downtown Denver. I bear everything about that day with crystalline clarity. The bitter October chill that had me bundled in my favorite cashmere scarf, the smell of fresh coffee from the bookstore cafe, the warm golden jeet filtering through the tall windows. I was browsing in the fiction section, fingering the spines of novels, when I noticed him standing nearby. Tall, with dark hair just beginning to gray at the TZC MPLs, and glasses that gave him a scholarly look. There was something calming about his presence. He stood so absorbed in the book in his hands, oblivious to the world around him. I reached Fifi eyes, or a novel at the same moment he did, our hands brushing against each other. I pulled back quickly, embarrassed at the contact, but when I looked up, he was smiling, a warm smile that reached his eyes. "Sorry about that," he said, his voice quiet but resonant in the hushed atmosphere of the bookstore. "Well, I didn't mean to invade your personal space." "It's okay," I replied, feeling an unexpected floody air in my chest. "I just didn't expect anyone else to be interested in this section." "Well, and trying to get through the classics," he admitted with a slight shrug. "But I'm more of a non-fiction guy, history, biographies, that sort of thing." "I understand," I said, surprised at how easily the words came. I tend to gravitate toward the same genres, but sometimes a good novel is exactly what I need. We laughed, and it felt surprisingly natural, like finding an old rhythm. His name was Alex, he told me, and he was a history professor at the University of Denver. He had recently moved from Boston after a relationship ended, looking for a fresh start in the western air and mountain LA that had always called to him. He was 32, though I wouldn't learn that until later. We talked about books, about Denver, about the way certain stories stay with you long after you've turned the final page. I found myself captivated by his thoughtful observations, the way he listened with its genuine interest to my opinions on authors and writing. In that moment, our 18-year age difference didn't exist. We were just two people connected by a love of words and ideas. Do you come here, often? Alex asked, his smile widening in a way that acknowledged the cliché of his question. Oh, I admitted. It's one of my favorite places. I come here to think, to escape. I'm a writer, so his place is a bit of a haven for me. Really? What do you write about? Mostly lifestyle pieces. Freelance work. I used to be a journalist, I explained, feeling a strange desire to impress him. I enjoy writing about life, people, and the world around us. I suppose that's why I'm always drawn to the stories in these books. That sounds fascinating, he said, his eyes bright with interest. Maybe one day I'll read one of your pieces. By the time we parted ways an hour later, we had exchanged phone numbers, and Alex had asked me to meet for coffee the following week. Walking home through Cheeseman Park, the autumn leaves crunching beneath my boots, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of anticipation, of possibilities unfurling before me. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Our coffee date at Pablo's Coffee on 6th Avenue was nothing like the stilted, resume-exchanging meetings I'd become accustomed to with men my age. With Alex, conversation flowed effortlessly, jumping from books to politics to our shared love of hiking the Colorado trails. He, too, told me about growing up in Massachusetts, about his passion for teaching history not as a sequence of dates, but as stories of human triumph and failure. I found myself sharing more than I intended. To my journalism career, my divorce, my children now scattered across the country pursuing their own dreams. You've lived such a full life, he said, leaning forward on his elbows, his coffee forgottenies, and between us. That's a polite way of saying I'm old, I replied with a self-conscious laugh. No, he said firmly, his gaze direct and unwavering. It's a way of saying you're fascinating. There was something about the intensity in his eyes that made my breath catch. I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen that way. Not as a divorced mother, not as a middle-aged woman, but as someone without knowing, someone desirable. That first coffee stretched into a walk around Washington Park, the Rocky Mountains, a purple silhouette against the western sky. When he asked if he could see me again, I said yes without hesitation, even as a voice in the back of my mind whispered warnings about the complexities of what I was stepping into. Over the next few months, Alex and I created our own world. Together, we explored Denver's art districts, spent Saturday mornings at the farmers market on South this Pearl Street, and hiked the trails of Roxborough State Park, the red rock formations towering a row on U.S.-like cathedral spires. He introduced me to his favorite historical documentaries. I showed how to make my grandmother's paella, the kitchen filling with the scent of saffron and sea as we cooked side by side, his hand occasionally brushing the small of my back in a way that sent electricity through me. I found myself drawn to his youthful energy, his boundless curiosity about the world, and the way he encouraged me to pursue my dreams of writing fiction, something I'd abandoned years ago in the practical demands of raising a family and maintaining a steady income. With Alex, I felt grounded and free, as if I could finally be both the responsible adult I'd become and the Nate woman I'd feared was lost forever. But doubts crept in, as they always do. The first time we and into one of my former colleagues at Union Station, I saw the flash of surprise in her eyes. The calculation as she looked between us. I introduced Alex vaguely as my friend and felt immediately guilty at the flicker of hurt that crossed his face. That night, alone in my apartment, I stare at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, noting the fine lines around my eyes, the silver strands in my auburn hair, and wondered what on earth I was doing. My daughter Emma called the next day, and I nearly told her about Alex, but the words stuck in my throat. What would my children think? What would my friends say? Was I setting myself up for heartbreak? Surely a man as young and vibrant as Lex would eventually want someone his own age, someone who could give him children, someone with who he could build a life from the ground up rather than joining one already half constructed. These thoughts haunted me as our relationship deepened. Alex sensed my withdrawal and gave me space, but mad. It clear he wasn't going anywhere. He sent me thoughtful texts about books he was reading, articles that reminded him of our conversations, and once, a small package containing a vintage fountain pen with a note that read, "For all the stories you have yet to tell." One evening in December, as we sat on the balcony of my Cherry Creek apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange, and pink, snow beginning to dust the city below, Alex turned to me with an expression I couldn't cue. Light read. "You know, I never thought I'd find myself with someone like you," he said quietly, his bio wreath visible in the cold air. "But I'm really glad I did. I don't care about the age difference, nay. Tally, I care about you." My heart raced, partly from joy and partly from fear. "I care about you too." "Oh, Alex," I admitted, the words feeling like both a release and a risk. "But I'm scared. I'm scared. Of opening up again, of getting hurt. And let's be honest, there are complications here that can't be ignored." "I understand," he said, taking my cold hands in his warm ones. "But I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, and I'm willing to take this slow, if that's what you need." As I looked into his eyes, зрение и стабильность в тусклом свете, я понял что-то важное. Жизнь не следует четким, narrative arcs I try to impose on my writing. It's messy and unpredictable, and sometimes the most beautiful chapters come when you least expect them. When you've convinced yourself the story is all real, written. Perhaps love isn't defined by age or convention. Perhaps it's simply about finding that our connection in a world where meaningful bonds are increasingly hard to come by. The future with Lex was uncertain, filled with questions I couldn't answer yet. But sitting there with snowflakes beginning to fall around us, the city lights twinkling below like earthbound stars, I made a decision to embrace uncertainty. I leaned forward and kissed him, feeling the weight of my fears lift as his arms enfolded me, the taste of his lips, the scent of his cologne mingling with the crisp winter air, component placement, the solid warmth of his body against mine. These sensations anchored me in the present moment. Remy, ending me that whatever tomorrow might bring, this was real. We've been together for 8 months now. It hasn't always been easy. My son Jason was skeptical when I finally introduced them over Christmas. Though he's warming to the idea, Emma, always the more emotionally intuitive of my children, saw the happiness in my eyes and gave her blessing immediately. Some friends have drifted away, uncomfortable with what they perceive as a midlife crisis, while others have embraced Alex as a welcome addition to our social circle. As for me, I've started writing fiction again, a novel about second chances and unexpected beginnings. Each morning, I wake up with a sense of purpose and possibility that I had forgotten could exist. Sometimes, when Alex is still sleeping beside me, his face peaceful in the early dawn light filtering through my bedroom window, I watch him and marvel at the strange, wonderful turns life can take. I don't know if this relationship will last forever. I don't know if the challenges of our different life stages will eventually prove too difficult to navigate. But I've earned that certainty is overrated, that the most vibrant parts of life often come from embracing the unknown. All I know is that at 50, when I thought my story was settling into its final, quiet chapters, a new page turned, And I'm grateful, every day, that I found the courage to keep reading.